So welcome anyone who's joining the webinar today. Thank you very much for joining us and welcome to our session. We are going to spend a couple of minutes just to make sure people settle in and we have time for everyone to join up and get settled for the rest of the webinar. Hi, from Vietnam. Yin Nguyen, thank you very much. Good to see you. Just give a little bit more time, people to sign in, and then we'll get moving. Don't want to rush things too fast. Great. Junati is here from Indonesia. Good. There's people joining up. Thank you all a time to sign up. Thanks very much, everyone. Great. So Malaysia, Indonesia, Vietnam, India, fantastic. Super. Well, I'll introduce and we'll start getting moving now. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining, and looking forward to a very, very informative and interesting session today. My name is Sue Allchurch, and I'm the Chief of Outreach and Engagement at the UN Global Compact. I work with businesses around the world to help them progress their sustainability. I'll be moderating today's webinar. And today is actually the 12th Global Compact event and Accenture partnership on our CEO study. We have a particular emphasis, obviously, on the Asia-Pacific insights that we'll be sharing with you today. Just a quick step back about ourselves, the UN Global Compact, for those of you who might not have heard of us. The UN Global Compact is the largest corporate sustainability initiative in the world. It is the corporate sustainability initiative of the Secretary General of the United Nations. We currently have 18,000 companies participating with us and 3,800 non-business signatories who work with us together. We cover 160 countries and 62 local networks, and there are actually 14 in the Asia-Pacific region. What we do is we work directly with companies, with private sector businesses, to support and enable them to align their businesses with these 10 principles. We have 10 principles which fall into 4 buckets. They cover the human rights, labor principles, the environment, and anti-corruption. And we know that by aligning businesses to these principles, we will collectively together deliver, advance the progress towards the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Of course, we have different goals at different periods of time. At the moment, we're trying to deliver the Sustainable Development Goals, and it's this work we do with businesses to try to do that. So what we have today is a very exciting webinar planned, and we will be sharing all these slides and this recording so that you'll be able to take any details away and deep dive into that. We're going to start with an introduction of the 12th annual CEO survey that we've done. We'll go then straight in after that into some insights and presentation, which will be led by Valentin de Miguel from the Accenture Growth Organization. He will take us through the data and show us how CEOs and companies today are focusing their efforts on sustainability and the external issues that are facing them. We're also going to be, very happily joined by 3 executives on participating companies who work with and long been participants of the UN Global Compact. And they'll be able to show in Asia the things that they actually do and can bring alive some of the concepts that Valentin's study will show us. And we'll then end with some thoughts about how the Global Compact can help you make progress. So first of all, a little bit about the study and a little bit about the background that we're living in at the moment. We are currently halfway towards delivering these Sustainable Development Goals. The deadline for the goals is 2030. So we're halfway there now. We've got 7 more years to go. Now, currently, progress isn't great. More than 50% of the targets or towards this SDGs is weak or insignificant, and even 30% have actually gone into reverse. So we really have a lot to do. That is obviously some significant issues that have hit us in the last years have really made impact on those goals. The pandemic, the rapid climate change issue, biodiversity loss and pollution are having a devastating and a long-lasting impact on our progress. That has obviously been hugely amplified as well by Russia's invasion of Ukraine, which has driven an increase in the price of food, price of energy, cost of finance, and has caused a cost of living crisis. Now, developing nations are bearing the brunt of all this, our collective failure to invest in the SDGs, to deliver against these goals. And many of them are doubly facing financing gap and debt. So there's lots that we need to do collectively, the UN, governments, and the business sector to really step up and address these issues. We need to focus on the climate issue. We need to expand social protection, deliver decent jobs, address gender equality, and look to increasing digital inclusion around the world. And I'm sure all of you are aware, as businesses, that you're seeing external and internal pressures to be more sustainable, but also external pressures on how you are able to run your business, the issues and challenges that you're facing. We're here to have a look at that, discuss what CEOs are doing, and consider some of the examples of great work that is going ahead. The study itself has been managed by Accenture. It's gathered more than 2,600 CEOs in 128 countries around the world, and in fact, 558 from Asia. And so this does help provide some valuable, diverse, and actionable insights from 18 different industries. So for a deeper dive into the key insights from this data, I'm going to hand over now to Valentin de Miguel from Accenture to take us through it. Thank you, Valentin.
Thank you, Sue. And hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good day, wherever you join us today. And my name is Valentin de Miguel. I'm Accenture's Chief Strategy Officer for Growth Markets, and I run Sustainability Services Practice for Accenture, also in growth markets. And it's my pleasure and honor to be here today presenting, as Sue kindly shared, the 12th UN Global Compact and Accenture CEO Study. Hopefully you don't mind that I've taken the liberty to produce a few slides to summarize some of the key findings of the study that will be sent to all of you afterwards. Although I know that by doing so, I'm probably running a risk here, because let me share with you that in a previous occasion when I was meeting the CEO of one of the biggest oil companies in Europe, as I was going to pull up the presentation, the CEO told me, "Hey, Valentin, what are you doing?" I said, "Well, I have prepared a couple of PowerPoint slides to share with you." And he went, "Hey, Valentin, if you need PowerPoint to talk to me, that's either because you don't have power or you don't have a point." Needless to say that since then I tried to use PDF, but in this case, I will use some PowerPoint in this presentation. If we can move on to the next slide, please. So what are the key highlights of the 12th joint UN Global Compact and Accenture CEO Study on Sustainability? I will firstly cover the context, then I will talk about the role of the CEOs in this context, and then we will move on to commenting on what CEOs are actually doing in the sustainability space. And I think it's fair to say that we are living an uncharted new world, unexplored territories. Let me share a quick data point. We in Accenture have developed a global disruption index, and it's a composite measuring economic, social, geopolitical, climate, consumer, and technology disruption. Well, this index tells us that macroeconomic volatility has increased 200% since 2017. 200%. And this compares to 4% from 2011 to 2016. So 4% versus 200%. Unprecedented volatility and disruption. So the CEOs in the study identify this unprecedented level of uncertainty, and it's been created probably by three reasons. Firstly, is the sheer number of challenges. They have identified more challenges than ever in the past. And let me tell you, none of these disruptions have gone away. But in addition to the sheer number of challenges, it's the nature of the challenges. Because these challenges go beyond the usual profitability concern. I mean, we're looking at threats to public health. We are looking at things like warfare and conflict. But in addition to the sheer number and the nature of the challenges, there is a greater impact because of the compound, because these challenges compound one another and they expose underlying dependencies. So we are talking about climate change and global inequalities. We are talking about geopolitics and climate change and food crisis. And in fact, globally, 87% of CEOs feel that current levels of geopolitical instability, for example, limits the world's ability to achieve the SDGs. As you can see in the slide, these challenges are about inflation and price volatility, talent scarcity, threats to public health, climate change. So very significant challenges. If we can move on to the next slide, please. How these challenges are impacting business. What are the most critical impacts that these challenges are having in the companies that we have surveyed? And I think it comes at no surprise that both globally and in Asia, the top two impacts to business from global challenges are the increased cost of raw materials and supply chain disruption. However, the third top impact in the case of global CEOs is the inability to attract and retain employees. But in the case of Asia, as you can see in the slide, is the increased cost of energy. And this may have to be with the technologies that we have in electricity generation in this part of the world, more based on coal. It may have to be with the increase in the consumption of energy per capita in this part of the world, which is 18% in the last decade versus a flat or decrease in the global north. But this increased energy cost is featured very prominently in the case of Asia. If we can move on to the next slide, please. We have seen what are the most critical challenges in setting the context. In this challenging environment, the growing importance of the S in ESG is redefining the role that the businesses and the private sector altogether are expected to play. And now there is a clear social sustainability expectation. And as a natural consequence, there is a raise in the expectations for the CEO role. And this is clearly perceived by the CEOs in the survey. By the way, coincidentally, this is coupled with a loss of confidence in governments and multilateral institutions. And as an example, according to the Edelman Trust Barometer, business has emerged as the most trusted institution with 61% rating, followed by NGOs with 59 and governments with 52. If we can move on to the next slide, we can conclude that, the bar is high for CEOs in this new context. But as you can see in the slide, CEOs are all in on sustainability. They are up to the challenge. In fact, in 2022, as you can see, 98% of CEOs understand that it's part of their role to make their business sustainable. And let me offer you a couple of data points for comparison. Firstly, only 83% of CEOs felt that way in 2013. So it's 83% in 2013, and it's 98% in 2022. Significant increase. And then secondly, when we asked CEOs if they think that CEOs were to be held accountable for their company's sustainability performance, 72% of CEOs strongly agreed with that in 2022. But only 19%, 19%, strongly agree with that in 2013. So from 19% in 2013 to 72% in 2022. Significant increase. Also worth highlighting, as you can see in the middle of the chart, that 95% of Asian CEOs understand that protection of local communities is also part of their role, versus 91% globally. If you can move on to the next slide, please. As you can see in the slide, the most important stakeholders who are impacting CEOs' agendas, and to some extent bringing about the evolution that we have described in the previous slide, are, and I guess this is no surprise for anyone, customers, governments, investment communities, and employees. Probably worth noting that the most significant increase since 2021 has been in governments. As you can see, it was identified by 52% of CEOs in 2022 as one of the key stakeholders impacting sustainability management over the next 5 years, versus 31% who identified governments just 1 year ago. So we moved from 31 to 52. Perhaps that's in connection with the issues that Sue just highlighted related to the pandemic, the coordinated action in the Russia-Ukraine war, so on and so forth. And perhaps also worth highlighting that something that's not in the slide, but worth noting that banks and insurers were identified by 21% of CEOs in 2022 in Asia, but by just 6% in 2021. So banks and insurers moving from 6% 2021 to 21 in 2022. And that probably reflects the increasing importance of financial stakeholders and of financing altogether in order to tackle the energy transition and sustainability in this part of the world. If we can move on to the next slide, please. So we've seen the context with the challenges. We've seen how this is impacting the role of CEOs. And despite this challenging environment, CEOs who, as we've seen, now overwhelmingly think it is their role to make the business sustainable, they remain hopeful that we can still achieve the SDGs. And in fact, 92% of CEOs feel that the world will be able to achieve SDGs by 2030. And remember, this is 2,600 CEOs. But true is that in the interviews that we've had with more than 130 one-on-one interviews, more than 130 CEOs, they have clearly stated that a new roadmap is needed to rescue SDGs by 2030. I think it's clear to all of us that with the variety and complexity of the challenges today, the solutions of the past will not be able to deliver the future of tomorrow. So what are the CEOs doing? What are the actions they are implementing? And this is what we have called the actions for resilience. And that is because sustainability is the only path to build a truly resilient business. And when you look at what specific actions CEOs are tackling, implementing in Asia, as you can see, number one is skills development. And skills are becoming critical. In a separate study, we in Accenture found out that the average number of skill sets that were required for jobs posted during 2020 to 2022 increased by 18%. So more skills are needed, and a different set of skills are needed. So that is action number one. Action number two is digital. I think it needs no explanation. It's in Accenture, the sustainability plus digital, we call it the twin transformation, and that is underpinning the reinvention of all industries and all companies. Thirdly is introducing sustainable products and services. And it's very clear that over time, a number of current products and services will not be allowed or will not be bought by consumers. But there is simultaneously an increasing interest, an increasing trend to introduce sustainable products and services. And that's very important. That creates new opportunities for companies today. And fourthly, it's constructing a responsible supply chain. So when you look at that, at the end of the day, what companies are doing is probably answering the questions of, hey, do I have the right talent? Do I have the right technology? And technology now is critical. Do I have the right products and services? And can I deliver my products and services? That's probably the logic behind. We can move on to the next slide. When we compare where Asian CEOs are living, when we compare Asian CEOs to average, the global average, we identify a number of areas where Asian CEOs are living. Very notably, on the left-hand side of the slide, it's the re-evaluation of companies' core purpose. That's the most significant deviation, positive deviation versus global average. And that is extremely important because, as you know, purpose has, especially today, a direct impact on brand and image, but also on engagement, ultimately on performance, as clearly demonstrated. So very important that Asian CEOs are leading in that space. Secondly, it's about duplicating and diversifying the value chains. Thirdly, on upskilling and reskilling the workforce, as well, we have already highlighted. Then sustainability data collection. As you know, it's not uncommon that many companies start their sustainability journey with data, getting to know, hey, what are my emissions? What am I doing today? So very important that Asian CEOs lead in that space and then transition into circular business models. So if we can move on to the next slide, and this will be my last comment, Sue, before I hand it over to you. Let me just finish by, can we move on to the next slide, please? Thank you. Let me finish by sharing that the CEO study ultimately highlights that global challenges will continue, and they will likely rise. So therefore, companies need strong foundation to survive and grow in these uncertain times. And by choosing to invest in sustainability, companies can build their own resilience and the agility to respond to upcoming unknown challenges. However, as we have just heard, adopting sustainability moves beyond just building resilience. which is of critical importance, but it moves beyond that. And it offers opportunities for industry transformation, business competitiveness, and new growth. So based on the insights of over 2,600 CEOs engaged in the survey and more than 130 one-on-one CEO interviews, one theme came through clearer than any. And it's that ambitious commitments to the SDGs are a great first step, no doubt. But now it's time to focus on how we achieve them and build resilience. So this research yielded a set of core initiatives that CEOs should look to embed across the strategy, the workforce, supply chain, and the greater ecosystem of the business. So at the end of the day, since SDGs were not necessarily formulated specifically for businesses, just businesses, it's an attempt to apply the business lens to SDGs achievement. So with that, Sue, let me hand it over back to you. Thanks very much for your attention.
Thank you, Valentin. That was extremely helpful. Very, very interesting, in-depth look at the CEO study. I mean, it's really clear. The overview is incredible amount of challenges hitting CEOs right now. Really unprecedented, huge challenges, and really not thought about, really hitting everybody. And yet what we see is that CEOs are really stepping up, and they're really focusing on people, upskilling people, getting the right jobs for people. They're focusing on innovation, new products and services, new ideas for good business, for performance, and of course on supply chains. And of course, supply chains is hugely impactful for the businesses, but also that has a huge impact right across the world, because our supply chains go right to small businesses right across the world. So that's good to see that businesses are really driving that, and CEOs are taking a lead. So now what we're going to do, we'll go further into our panel, and we'll listen to some real practical examples from businesses who are actually taking a lead. So now I'm going to introduce you to the panelists. The first here is Gagan Bula, and she is the founder and CEO of Superhuman Race, which is a technology company. It's based in India, in Delhi, and it produces technology that enables companies to measure the good that they're progressing. We're going to hear from her a little bit later. We're also joined by Marco Nielsen, who is the Chief Executive Officer at the Port of Tanjung Pelepas in Malaysia. It's Malaysia's largest container terminal. So really interesting to hear from the work that he's doing. And we have here Dr. Angkitan, who is the Executive Chairman of GT Tire, which is one of the world's largest tire manufacturers based out of Indonesia. So really excellent to be able to hear from all of these executives. And also we're going to hear again from Valentin to Miguel, because he's obviously got a very good perspective of what's happening in Asia as a whole. So I'm going to kick off first of all with a question for Valentin again. And that really is drawing from the data that you've just presented for us, Valentin, so well. As you know, as we've seen, that there are so many prevailing challenges for CEOs, and that really is making CEOs evaluate the role that they play in the sustainability agenda. And they're really thinking, how can they best contribute to the SDGs? And what you've pointed out is that businesses are still doing that. In fact, more CEOs are even more aware of their need and stepping up, as you say, all in to the sustainability agenda. So I'd really like if you could consider for us, what value are those businesses getting? What is the business value by taking this lead in sustainability? And is there any advice that you can give for any other businesses here listening about how they could take a step forward and drive progress towards the SDGs?
Thank you, Sue. Yeah, very happy to. And in terms of value, and we have highlighted the challenges, and it's certainly a very challenging environment. But in this context, let me bring up a lovely quote from, I don't know if you're familiar, many of you, I guess, are familiar with Formula One. There is a very famous driver called Ayrton Senna, Brazilian driver. And he said, it's impossible to overtake 15 cars if it's sunny. You can only overtake 15 cars when it's raining. So these moments are fantastic opportunities for companies to overtake and to leapfrog competition. And in that space, in terms of choices and what companies can do, firstly, perhaps there is no much choice, because the only path to resilience is via sustainability, to create a truly sustainable future. And I think that we all were convinced after COP26 that the collaboration between private companies and public institutions were critical. And we were all convinced that the private sector was critical in that space. So firstly, probably there is no choice. But since we have to go there, to your point, what's the value? I think the value is, on the one side, there is value in creating additional products and services, in creating additional revenue. There is also value in cutting costs in many instances. Many of you probably know that the International Labour Organization has indicated that by implementing the measurements towards the Paris Agreement as circular economy, we will be creating 24 million jobs by 2030. So there is value for the companies, new activity, new jobs, but there is value for the community. Because I think we need to look at, we in Accenture look at the 360 value for any initiative we tackle. That is not just the financial value, but the sustainability value, the diversity, inclusion and diversity value, and the employees' value. There is, and I think sustainability offers a great opportunity to achieve that 360 degrees value. Perhaps the point and finally the suggestion or the advice, if I could, Sue, is let's start executing at pace. Because our study last year, Sue, I'm sure you remember, highlighted the fact that companies are not ready typically for implementing, for achieving the SDGs. And in many studies, we did another study and we find out that just 10% of companies who have made a pledge are in a position to meet the pledge that have there. So this is the decade of the execution. Let's start executing. That would be my final comment.
Yeah, thank you, Valentin. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And again, one of the things you showed in your slides at the beginning was how retaining talent is so important. Well, it's really clear from a lot of data that you've shown us on other studies as well, is that employees want to work for companies who are making progress and making progress on SDGs. So that's a good way for talent retention and therefore driving good business. Thank you. So I'd like now to move to Dr. Tan, who is here for leading his business. And it's really interesting what we've heard from Valentin. It's really clear that you as a CEO are facing multiple different shocks: climate, conflict, the ongoing impact of COVID-19, so many different things that we never expected to be having to challenge before. But we have found that 93% of CEOs, as shown by Valentin's report, are saying that although there's 10 simultaneous challenges hitting them, still 98% of them are still putting sustainability at the top of their agenda and more than ever before. That is really a leadership. It's wonderful. It's a leadership challenge and it's admirable. And I'd love to hear from you, Dr. Tan, as a leader. What is it that you do to lead your business through these crises, but keep sustainability at the front of your agenda and continue to work towards a better world? It's a real leadership thing, and I'd love to hear from you how you take this lead.
Thank you, Sue. Thank you for the opportunity for this session. I think personally, I've been committed to conservation and the climate for more than 25 years because of my own reasons, and but and I've been incorporating the ideas and the activities outside my company into the company. In the beginning, it really caught my attention when there were people applying to work for us, and the first thing they saw about the company was that I was involved in conservation. It's not about our products or our technology and all that. So that was, the beginning. But I think now, as we go along, the momentum is really coming on very strong, despite all the shocks, really, that you mentioned, including war. We faced that also. So, the tire industry is quite large. It's in itself, it's about $150 billion company business globally, the industry. If you include downstream and auto parts, it's a $600-700 billion business. In itself, the tire is a peculiar product. We are an aggregator of upstream raw materials from agriculture, from mining, from steel, from rubber, chemicals, petrochemicals, and so many other products. And we value add to those raw material, and we go downstream to supply to the mobility industry. So the impact of our companies in the tire industry is quite large, beyond our own operations. So whatever we do in the company, how we source, how we manage our scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3, impacts, how we manage people, the SDGs in every country that we operate in, 130 countries, how we distribute, or how we provide equity to our downstream customers, our SMEs, are all very important. And we have to take care of all these issues. So it's not, as Valentin said earlier, it's not a matter of choice, really. The world has changed. The impacts are here. We have to manage it. And I agree with all the survey that was laid, the priorities there. The people are key, because if our teams don't change, our teams are not equipped to manage with these shocks, our companies cannot survive. So those are the things we're focusing on. Technology is priority, because technology is getting more accessible, it's getting cheaper in a way. We are now able to put in many sensors in our businesses to lower energy consumption, lower waste, doing recycling. We put in now already 18 megawatts of power on our rooftop. We're putting 42 other megawatt. We're closing down plants which are low energy efficient. So there's a lot of things we can do. The design of the product, we design product that going into electric vehicles that can save energy and make the battery last longer. We design products that can be recycled. So there's a lot of there's so many things that we can do. And I would say, on a positive note, to end with this, everything that we see is a problem, but every problem is an opportunity. So it's really a world out there, and see, and it depends on us how we can capture these opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And it's really great to hear from you, because that's true leadership. I mean, you have a whole supply chain, upstream, downstream. You can have huge impact. So it's heartening to hear leaders as yourself taking that lead. We're starting these supply chain initiatives. So working with organizations like yourself, how can we help all these smaller businesses adopt the same practices? So yeah, would be keen to talk to you about that going forward.
Thank you, Sue.
But thank you very much. And I like the idea where you said that this is lots of opportunities come out of this. And that takes me to my question that I was going to ask you, Marco, who in leading your organization. You're a leader who's driving sustainability in this time of crisis and difficulties, and you're not deprioritizing it, you're still driving it forward. I'd love it if you could show us some of the opportunities you see that have come out of driving sustainability, and indeed some of the practical challenges that you face on this journey.
All right, thank you. First of all, I would also what Dr. Enki said, there is a lot of opportunities going forward. So, and we are a port, we are an international port. For us, global trade is important, because without global trade, and we as a business won't have a future as a service industry and supply chain. And we just also heard in the report how important supply chains are and that supply chains need to be resilient. So that means for us is, even though we are a private company, we have also, so to say, a government agenda, or we are on the agenda of governments, because supply chains need to be more resilient. So what we then looking at, and I think that that's maybe one additional angle I would like to bring in, because we also heard in the report about customers, and we also talked about people. So and if we look this from a business perspective, our future customers and future employees is the so-called Generation Z. So and these people we need to try to attract into our business, because ports industry is maybe not as attractive as, let's say, the Google and the Alphabets of this world, but with the technology changes we have and we will foresee, we need also the right people and the right caliber of people and right knowledge of people in our industry. So and therefore, what I find very interesting, and was a statement I just read very recently, Generation Z doesn't want more adverts, they want transparency. They want transparency as a customer, and they want transparency as an employee. So, and therefore, this is for us, and it's really seen also from a business perspective. So if we want to attract talents, if we want to get the right people in, if we want to stay meaningful in the supply chain, we need to make sure that we are transparent. And that's not only for the environmental SDGs, it's also equally important for the social ones, on which we get measured as well from Generation Z. And of course, on the governance part, which gets more important as well. So, and therefore, just to share when we talk about the future, so how are we tackling these issues, I think, or these opportunities, I think resilience is a very, very important word. We need to make sure we stay resilient, and also in the supply chain, or obstacles we, for example, had during COVID, we need to stay resilient. So, and what I mean with it, just a very quick example. At that time, when we had at the height of COVID and the vaccines was rolled out, we saw it, the government in Malaysia did well, but for us, it was not fast enough. So we have offered the government, let's take over a vaccine center for the logistics industry in southern Malaysia. And we had no clue how to run a vaccine center. We haven't heard of it 2 years before. And suddenly we were able, within 4 weeks, to set one up. And within another 8 weeks, we have vaccinated 25,000 or 23,000 people in the logistics industry. So, and it has also helped the industry. It has had help that supply chain could ease up, that importers, exporters at that time, and were still able to get the goods on the market. The factories had all their own difficulties with lockdowns and so on. So, but we try to play our part. And we talked about it, and we're transparent about it. And that attracts people, and then attracts customers to say, okay, there is something, there is resilience in, there is a supply chain, there is the thought through, right? And was just an example how we are a resilient and an agile company. And the same counts obviously for what also the previous speaker said, that we look on the environmental part, we look obviously for new technologies, optimizing footprint, we're looking into solar. So we're doing all this, but for us in our industry to close this, it's really important to get the right talents and attract the right people into this business segment. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Monica. That's a living example of what the data is showing, which is right at the top, the needs of business being talent scarcity. It's really, I mean, we all feel it and know it, but it's so clear that it's really important. And of course, being a sustainable organization really helps that. Then your customers, and then meeting government's needs. So there are, plenty of opportunities and reasons to make this progress. So great, it's great to hear that. And also interesting to hear about how at the forefront of your work is technology. That's another thing that data shows when we deep dive: digital transformation, transparency, bringing digital to enable data to show what's happening right through supply chain is a growing issue. So it's the sort of thing that we're seeing in the study throughout.
And it's a proof we're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
So to customers and to future employees and current employees.
And it must help in efficiencies and
absolutely
as well. So in the end, all these things are a positive builder of business resilience and business progress. Which actually does bring us to Gagan, who this is what her business does. And I'd like to move to you again, and with a particular lens as well on this question of sustainability. We know the Asian Development Bank tells us that SMEs represent 96% of all Asian business and provides 2 out of 3 private sector jobs on the continent. So really important. we'd love to hear from you. What are the particular challenges that you face as a smaller business? And how can we help? How can you overcome these challenges, and how can maybe multinationals themselves help? So over to you, Gagan, and love to hear your perspective from a small business point of view.
Great, thanks, Sue. So actually, I'm going to talk about three things, and I'll get to the data bit in the end. But the three things that I'm going to talk about. So the first one is the economic distribution of benefits, whether we look at SMEs or whether we look at minority communities or even women, right? The second thing that I'm going to talk about is the nexus of climate and culture. And the third thing that I'm going to talk about is, what are the challenges and how can we fix them, right? Of which data is a big one. And so, in terms of the economic distribution, you mentioned 96% of businesses in Asia are SMEs. Even if we look globally, more than 90% businesses are SMEs, and more than 2 billion livelihoods are supported by SME businesses around the world. Also, as we transition deeper into the climate crisis, I think one of the themes that is emerging globally, some of the things that Dr. Enki-Tan talked about, so, with warfare and geopolitics and COVID-19, there's a huge focus on localization of resilience, as well as, keeping the global impact of businesses. So when we talk of industry, we talked about global industry, even when Dr. Enki-Tan talked about that. But then, when we come back to local supply chains, we have to make them robust. Marco mentioned that as well. So I think that one of the big challenges that I'm seeing in this space that is particularly relevant for SMEs is that today's sourcing criteria only have economic embedded in them. So I don't think, and I actually looked at the data because we are a data company. So even in terms of big numbers being reported by companies, less than 20% companies are integrating sustainability criteria in sourcing and procurement. And I think when it comes down to the smallest players, so even community impact or even a nonprofit, we often go beyond the local nonprofit to find a large global partner because of the reputational risk that is involved with working with partners. So I think sustainability criteria definitely can be integrated in sourcing, and here's where the nexus between climate and culture comes in as well. So when companies report on scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions, it's actually a surprising data point, but not surprising to the CEOs in the room. 11.4 times of our operational emissions are actually caused by scope 3 emissions, which are in fact, probably embedded somewhere in our supply chain, including the SMEs that we work with. And there is no data discipline that percolates down to the level of the smallest company that you're working with. And it often becomes your biggest risk. So how do we build that data discipline in a simplified way? And then bring everyone on the same page in terms of reporting. So the reason why I think that the data discipline for SMEs in particular is important and why it is relevant to large multinationals as well is because when we look at the reports published by large multinationals, less than 1% companies are actually able to measure impact, their own impact at the level of the indicator of the SDG, right? So we all like making broad sweeping statements like, our company supported 10 out of 17 sustainable development goals. But I think the knowledge of exactly what needs to be changed and how we are moving that lever through our actions is missing. And so I think access to capital, sustainable sourcing criteria, keeping in mind that a large percentage of the world population actually relies on livelihood. And when those opportunities get taken away, that is what creates civil unrest. That is what also leads to greater climate pressures, right? So when these people that are not able to survive locally with their businesses, they move to urban agglomerations, the pressure on urban ecosystems increases, leading to more pollution and so on, right? So I think that climate culture nexus is what we need to keep in mind as we build the criteria for sourcing in large multinational organizations. But as we do it, because larger organizations are subject to greater risks, both financial as well as reputational, I think it's also important to keep in mind that there is a significant capability development that needs to happen in the SME sector, but also in industry in general, right? So I don't think that as far as the data discipline is concerned, most organizations are able to contextualize analyze their own impact for ESG against their financial performance, for example. So even if we were to be in a room of the most successful companies in the world that have been around for centuries now, if we ask about the next 100 years, their strategy is going to have to change when they start evaluating the financial risks and contextualizing their ESG performance versus that financial risk that has emerged. So yeah, so from my point of view, keeping the climate culture nexus in mind, sustainable sourcing, building data discipline across the value chain, and having, I think, sponsors within multinational organizations for some of these initiatives. So it's interesting, I was looking at a study that was talking about sustainable sourcing as it relates to sourcing from women. So climate sustainable sourcing, sustainability sourcing is not even something that is happening to a great degree today. Only a handful of companies worldwide are doing it. But even in terms of procuring from women, the business that was featured in the study was a business that was sourcing 2% of their total spend from women, right? And this number is it's true across the value chain. You look at VC funding that goes to women-owned companies, which are usually SMEs, again 2%. That's been the average since 2011. So in the last 11 years, that number has not moved from 2%. Even if we look at women on Fortune 500 companies, we find that that number is less than 5% till date. And in 43% of those companies, the chairman is not a woman usually, right? So there's the creation of a separate role to sort of go alongside the woman CEO to sort of support her. So I think those are things. So those are data points that tell us that we are not managing for what is the most important thing today, which is the climate culture nexus. And I think in order to manage for this, we will have to change the way we think and integrate data discipline, because data is objective. As human beings, we love stories, but stories are not objective. They are anecdotal. They celebrate examples of women that have, founded successful companies like Canva, or, women CEOs like Indra Nooyi from PepsiCo, right? They are not looking at, the rest of the workforce that is not getting advancement opportunities, that is getting paid much lower, and so on. And similarly for climate as well, right? So we are celebrating what is being reported, but we are not looking at the vast majority of what is not getting reported. So even though scope 3 emissions are 11.4 times of operational emissions, and they are 70% of the total emissions that get or reported or not reported on the sustainability reports of companies, I think we ignore those aspects as we sort of go into anecdotal reporting. So I think it's extremely important to build data discipline in the world that we live in so we can continue to live.
No, absolutely. I think it's absolutely right. And we do see that I think it's 52% of CEOs in this study are saying that they're trying to improve their data visibility, the rigor and the clarity of the data, transparency through the supply chain, because yeah, that is 90% of the world's business. There's no way forward without that. And we need to be tracking gender representation, equal pay for equal value, living wage, all these core things right the way through. So yeah, it's a big challenge, but it's as you say, it's the progress that has to be made if we're going to create the world that we want. So thank you very much, Gagan, and thank you very much everybody for your input today. Marco, Valentin, Enki, and Gagan, thank you very much for all that the time and energy that you've given us. We are going to share all the information as well for everyone, so we'll be able to follow up with more of that. But as we close, I would like to leave you with one quote from our leader, women leader as well, which is good to know. And she mentions then said this to us, and it applies to all of us. As you look into the future, her appeal to us is step up and speak up. Don't compromise on your ambition, and always punch above your weight. So we're all going to need to do this if we are going to make progress to get these goals back on track and to deliver against the target that we need by 2030. For those of you who might be thinking, how do I actually get going and make this progress? We have several resources and things to offer you so that you can connect, you can learn, you can even lead with the Global Compact. But one thing that's very specific and can help focus on this particular area of how do I speed up progress towards these goals is a business accelerator that we have coming out now. It's the SDG, the Sustainable Development Goal Ambition Accelerator, and it's a 3-month program, starts this October. It allows you to go with a cohort of organizations through, you'll give it some resources, some peer learning, networking, training, and expertise, so that you can go beyond the incremental things that you might be doing step by step, but really step up to deliver the change that we need to get back to deliver those sustainable development goals. And in doing so, generate ideas, grow your business, performance, and resilience. We know that 95% of CEO of businesses have found new ways to contribute to the goals by going through this program. There's an 87% overall satisfaction rate. And we know that 80% of participants have agreed that this accelerator has given them new goals and new ambitions. So yeah, we'll be sharing the goal with the slides. So really happy to help anyone step up and join that. It's been covered already now in 1,600 companies and in 80 different countries. So we know it's a good initiative. And indeed, as we finish up all together now, we do encourage you to consider contacting us and joining the Global Compact as a whole, so that you can really take a lead and drive progress. You know, we're here, whatever size the company is, whatever geography, whatever sector, whether you're learning, whether you're leading, there really is a place for an organization to work with us so that we can drive towards the world that we want. We have the contact details of here of Ms. Simeon Yu, who is our Participant Engagement Manager here in Asia, Oceania. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you very much for our panelists, and we look forward to connecting or working with any of you in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Have a good
Thank
day.
you all.
Bye.
Bye.